Welcome into the DNVR Avalanche Podcast. We got AJ, Rudo, and Jesse coming to you live on a Thursday. We'll get to the Hall of Fame class and that conversation in a little bit. First, the Avs news of the day. Erik Johnson sounds like will be going to free agency, not staying with the Avs. I don't think this is all that surprising to any of us.
Everybody's saying their goodbyes and stuff, but we'll see what the market is for him.
You never know.
And just given his credentials and his size and handedness, I expect he'll get an offer somewhere. But it really wouldn't surprise me if we got into August.
And the Avs are like, have $700K to come hang out.
He was unsigned, and it was like, hey, give that guy like a PTO.
Yeah.
And be like, hey, just show up. Just get through training camp healthy, and we'll give you a deal.
And you can come be our number 7 or something.
Like the Jack Johnson thing from a few years ago. Yeah.
It'd be weird to see the Avs give Erik Johnson a PTO.
It would. But it would just be like we're just checking on health and health alone.
Yeah.
And that's it. Not like we're trying to see if you can still play. Like they have to have, they already know that decision.
Yeah.
And letting him get to free agency tells you that they feel like they can find an upgrade on him.
Yeah,
which I think they can.
I was gonna say, with all due respect to Erik Johnson, and my biggest thing, we talked about it. I think it was last week, or maybe it was earlier this week, where he lost his ability to flex it up and down the lineup. He was so clearly exposed when he played anything above third pairing minutes, third pairing matchups.
I'm not going to say that it was entirely his fault because it wasn't.
Right.
But there's a clear line of delineation of Sam Girard next to Erik Johnson and Sam Girard when Bowen Byram got healthy,
else.
And how different and how different the defense performed, and in particular, Girard when he was with EJ
and
versus
then
away from
popped
EJ.
off in the second half of the year. Yeah.
Exactly when they were not together.
Oh shit! I just completely lost my train of thought.
I'll gotcha while you're thinking about it.
Thank you.
Is there a worse system in the NHL than the Avs for a guy who's aging out and has lost his skating than the Colorado? Because they ask their defensemen to just fly up and down the ice.
Anything that wants mobility out of its defensemen, any
Bad
team
for
that wants
EJ,
mobility out of its defensemen is going to be a bad fit for EJ.
Well, and especially this is what I was going to say, especially the way that Jared Bednar likes to utilize his pairings and is just decor in general. You play with different partners, you play in different situations.
Yep.
And Erik Johnson, I think, just has lost a little bit of his ability to do that. And where I thought you were going with it's not all on him, they had him slotted in. You're our third pairing guy. You're our 6. And then the injuries just got...
Definitely not on him that he had to play up in that line.
Right.
It was not his fault.
There was a week where he was literally rolling as like the top guy. And it's like... You are not in a position to do that. This system is not designed for you to do this.
2014 was a long time ago.
Right. And it's just, that is the part where I think when you're talking about systematically, forget even the way that they like to play, just the way that Jared Bednar utilizes his pairings. Even Jack Johnson, we saw be relatively effective playing with different guys in different scenarios.
Both times. It wasn't like a Patrick Nemeth thing where it worked and
really
then he came back and it was a nightmare.
Right. Into the playoffs.
Jack Johnson can't seem to play anywhere else. But in Colorado, it's like, this works, baby.
Yeah.
Scored more goals than Erik Johnson last year.
And when Erik Johnson losing his ability to do that.
It's just true.
And to your point of they think they can upgrade on that, just bring Jack Johnson back.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I think they could upgrade on that.
But my point is, like,
if that's your 7, man,
it's not that hard to. Oh, totally.
Like, Jack Johnson is your 7. I'm like, we're cool.
We're good
here.
with that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And it's a shame because I hope Erik Johnson stays in the league. I hope he's around. I hope we get another chance to talk to him because great guy. And I really do. The reason why I'm with you guys where let's not fully rule it out yet.
Yeah.
Is because I think there is an understanding of how well he fits in the room, the leadership role he has, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What he means to the organization.
And look, the Avs locker room is incredibly strong. They'll be fine. Mm-hmm. But I think it is certainly worth noting that one of the bigger parts of that is EJ being one of those voices in the locker room, being one of the OG guys that was here when they wanted to rebuild it and put it in the right direction.
He was one of those pillars of building up.
Yeah, exactly.
The accountability and the attitude and the culture that exists today. he leaves that behind as part of his legacy.
Yep. So
it's not enough to get his jersey retired.
Definitely not close.
But I tend to agree with you
all
guys.
the love.
Yep.
Like,
the cup didn't change it. Him winning the cup.
Had he been healthy for his entire tenure in Colorado, you're probably having that conversation.
Because if he was healthy, it's probably 1,000 games played.
Instead, you're
he's
talking
probably
about
pushing that number.
700 games played,
and then you're talking about he's Milan Hajduk on defense.
Yeah. See, and that's the comparable that was in my head. Now, obviously, he was never the captain.
Instead, he's a lot more like Alex Tanguay, and Tanguay is not getting his number retired either. So
which one?
Either
he's probably closer to like Paul Stastny.
I mean,
the cup changes it.
Either way, not getting his number retired, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I saw a lot of conversation of like, EJ, he's he's like an all-time Av and this and like.
See, if the Avs had like a Ring of Fame type thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Sure, he'd be
like
in that.
The Avs like alumni association or whatever.
Right.
Like he should definitely be a part of that.
I like what Toronto does, and I know they've done it out of a necessity of we are running out of numbers, so they unretired everything and now they just honor numbers.
Yeah,
I think I really do like that. Keep the numbers in circulation, put a banner with the name, with the number. Toronto does it with a nice picture of him as well.
I don't even know if I agree with this, and this is nothing against Erik Johnson. But when you look at like the bigger scheme, you have to understand the Avalanche are a very young organization.
Totally.
Really. And a lot of these numbers, like look at what Cale Makar is doing.
Cale Makar, Nathan McKinnon, and Gabe Landeskog are all headed to retired numbers, and that could be Mikko Rantanen.
But I want to talk about Makar specifically because he's
have 11 retired numbers.
He's going to be what, 23, 24 next year?
Yeah.
And he will be the Avs' best defenseman of all time by like every statistical category at age 24. So it shows how little depth the Avs all-time list actually has. And that's why I think you need to be a little bit careful with retiring and honoring numbers for these guys.
Well, and to be honest with you, Erik Johnson was kind of like Varley and Net, where it was like he was the best player on some bad teams.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm glad that he got to win
good
one,
teams. You saw him, and some of that is because of his age and where he was in his career, but like he was like 30 when the Avs got good. It's not like he was dead. And he was a top 4 guy for them, but he hasn't been their leading guy in a long time.
To me, I think it's more about if I would be heavily in favor of them honoring Erik Johnson, however, again, in these hypotheticals, Ring of Fame, honor numbers, whatever, because of what I think he did mean to the organization internally, if nothing else, what all he stuck through, wanted to be part of it, 100%.
Take 6 out of circulation for 10 years.
Yeah,
then you can move on.
That's why I like the honoring numbers, because you don't have to take it out of circulation. It's like, yep, we gave it to someone else. You're right there. But we gave it to someone else.
There's so many numbers, and it's not like football where you're in a position group.
Yeah.
There's a lot of numbers, man. You could take his number out of circulation for a decade.
Sure.
And just be like, hey, and then after 10 years, you're like, hey, we paid our respects here.
I like that.
Yeah,
I like that.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
Maybe not 10, just like 5.
I mean, dude,
But
they
still,
definitely even did it with Duchesne. There was at least a couple guys that came in before Dylan Security
That wanted
were
9.
Like, can you give us 9? Like, we're going to give that a year to breathe. We're going to let that chill for a year.
Yeah, it's I think I wouldn't have any problems with Erik going into a Ring of Honor or whatever you want to call it, as far as that is concerned. But I do think 50 years from now, EJ's not going to be some guy that everyone was like, oh, remember this dude?
Yeah. But I think there's a lot of those with older franchises.
There absolutely
where
is.
it's like, why?
Yeah.
And I also think that's why Toronto went to the system they did. Like, well, we can't be dicks and just unretire these guys, so let's just honor them.
Yeah, similarly, like I had no idea who, when I was covering my first Jets game, I'm like messaging Z, and I'm like, who the fuck are these guys?
Yeah.
Like I know Dale Hawerchuk, right? Like, but there were a
the
couple
big
guys up
names,
there where I'm like,
and I think the
I know who Alexander Steen is. I didn't know his dad. I didn't know anything about Thomas. I didn't know
same
anything
family?
about his. Yeah, I had no idea about his dad. Like I just didn't know, right? Had no idea about that. And it's like, look, when you retire jerseys for guys that are not Hall of Fame players, or in the Milan Hajduk's, like really, really high-end players who
literally
played
leading your franchise in stats.
With you, and it's a tough sell for me.
The Avs have actually done, because I was just sitting here thinking about what you were saying, and I was like, Hayduk, I think, is the only, and maybe Foot, in 20 years, someone would need to be like, who is this guy? But both of those dudes, I think you look up and pretty quick are like, oh.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at Foot and you're like, he was on both Cup teams. He was a top guy on both teams.
Olympic gold medalist.
He's captain later in his career.
Yeah.
With the team.
He has a very solid borderline
Hall of
Fame case.
For a defenseman of his era, for sure.
Yeah, and that's where when you see certain guys go into the Hall, you wonder where you're like,
this doesn't add up on the paper, but yeah.
So Scott Stevens gave 70 concussions in his career, and that's Hall worthy.
Well, the thing that's weird for me, and I'm not even arguing against this, but it's just so funny because they were talking during the Stanley Cup final on the broadcast about Pietrangelo, and it was in Game 5. They were up 8-2 or something like that, so it was done. They were talking as if Vegas had already won, and they were saying Alex Pietrangelo. They were listing off all of his accolades and captained, a cup and now another one. And they were like, oh, slam dunk Hall of Famer. And I was like, sure. Yeah,
I don't know about slam dunk.
Well, and again, I wasn't even necessarily arguing the point. I was like, whatever, his resume is his resume. But it is just so funny because I remember when I was younger, the Hall of Fame seemed very, very reserved for the all-time greats, the greatest of the great.
Yeah.
And it's just so funny when you step back, you're like, oh no, I guess it is just Hall of Fame resume. Did they win enough? Did they contribute enough?
And we'll get into this conversation a little bit more. Before we do, though, just throwing it out there, great candidate for Avalanche Ring of Honor, Ray Bourque.
See, I know you guys don't like the
retired jersey. Yeah.
I know you guys don't like that one. I don't have an issue with it because of how iconic the moment was. That was just voted right before the playoffs started as the most iconic moment in Stanley Cup playoff history. I think it's
arguably one of the greatest moments ever in sports, let alone hockey.
Yeah, and so that's why I think you were caught up a little bit in the moment in how iconic that whole thing was. I actually don't have a problem with Bourque. I remember even at the time thinking it was a little weird because Boston held their own jersey retirement.
And justifiably so.
Right. And that was the one part I remember thinking was interesting. But at the same time, that speaks to not only the player that Ray Bourque was, but the character he was and the leader he was. That dude's got his jersey retired in 2 separate buildings.
Yep.
Not a lot of people that could say that.
A few less than Gretzky, but...
Yeah.
Anyway, it's an interesting conversation when you get into those
23?
Guys.
Did they take 23 out?
I don't think so.
I know that they were talking about it a few years ago.
I don't think so.
I think that one's kind of the one that nobody wears, but they didn't take it out.
Yeah.
That style, which hockey does a lot of. No one literally sent guys back down to the minors because they tried to wear 66. So,
dude, that one was so weird.
All of it was so weird, but we don't need to get into that conversation today. What we do need to get into today is to let you guys know that we're brought to you by Breckenridge Brewery, the official beer of DNVR. You can get yours at your local liquor store. Use the Breck Beer Locator online today to find it near you. Of course, you can always come down to the bar and get it here. 8 different kinds on tap. Jesse was complaining about how summer doesn't exist here in Denver, but at least there's some summer beers at least.
We're
Jesse,
getting skipped
to make it feel
I'm just having to chug these summer beers to trick myself into it, Rudo.
There you go. The Mountain Beach Sour. It's got you covered. So go check that out. At least you can feel like summer while it's pouring rain.
I just bought a UV light. I've got it in my basement. I'm sitting down there chugging these summer beers. Sitting on a lawn chair.
What is this, Alaska?
Feels like it.
Go get your beer. Also, check out Pins and Aces, the official golf apparel merchandiser for DNVR. I know Jesse's complaining about it. Look, AJ and I's apps say the weather's going to be good this weekend. So the sun's going to be out.
If it's not, I'm holding both of you personally responsible.
I can live with that.
Go get yourself a tea time and make sure you're looking good with Pins and Aces hats, shirts, pants, cleats, the amazing DNVR golf towels. You get 15% off everything at pinsandaces.com when you use code DNVR, and you get free shipping. Tons of cool apparel. They also have the liquor stick and the beer sleeve. If you want to bring those Breck brews onto the course with you, beer sleeve's the way to go. Slides into your bag. You put 7 beers in it. You're on the course. You're good to go. Look, it's the way to be with Pins and Aces. Again, go check them out. Pinsandaces.com. Use the DNVR code to get 15% off and free shipping. Second period of the DNVR Avalanche podcast. All right. So I don't think we'll have a ton to say about this year's Hockey Hall of Fame class. There are 7 people. Ken Hitchcock, Pierre Lacroix, which we talked about yesterday, Tom Barrasso, Henrik Lundqvist, Caroline Ouellette, Pierre Turgeon, Mike Vernon, as the 7 going into the Hockey Hall of Fame for the 2023 class. One, that's a pretty big class, but I think all are well-deserved. The conversation I would want to get into here, and I know Tiff is going to have some stuff to say about the women's side of it if she wants to.
I'm going to explode.
But I wanted to start here. Are you guys big hall or small hall people?
I don't know what that question means.
Would you like? I guess appropriately limited could be the correct answer too. Okay. But
so this, I mean, that it just goes back to what I was saying, where it's. As a kid, I remember thinking Wayne Gretzky, Mario Lemieux.
The top
I guess Jaromir Jagr
guys.
Still isn't retired.
There were 17 guys in the Hall of Fame.
Right. And Joe Sakic, he retired. It's like, oh yeah, he went in. Of course, he's one of the all-time greats. Yeah. Peter Forsberg, well, of course.
Even Peter Forsberg was like, oh, he deserves to be in, but he's a weird anomaly case, right? And then it turns out, no, not really.
and it's just so it's so funny as continue to get older and you become an adult, and you I've been to the Hockey Hall of Fame a couple times, and you take a step back and look at all of it, it's like, there's a lot of weird shit in here. There's a lot of stuff that, I don't know if I would say is Hall of Fame
caliber
worthy.
So you're a small hall guy, confirmed.
Yeah. I don't know.
He can't make up his mind on it.
I feel like if you didn't finish in the top 50 in scoring,
here's what I think there should be.
Win a major award.
You're just out.
I think there should be a very exclusive Hockey Hall of Fame, all-encompassing Hockey Hall of Fame. And then I think there should be an NHL Hall of Fame. Kind of like how there's a Colorado Sports Hall of Fame.
I think this is stupid. I think there should be one Hall of Fame. And then if you're in the NHL Hall of Fame, I think that's dumb.
Yeah, but I do think there are a lot of guys who it's kind of like the Ring of Fame thing. They should be recognized for what all they did. What they did was incredible. But are they in the top 1%?
Yeah.
No. But Alex Pietrangelo, when he's done, he deserves to be recognized somewhere.
Yeah, and he'll probably have his number retired in St. Louis.
Well, so I don't know. That ended really
Vegas.
bitter.
Just do a Ray Bork all over.
They should do it in Vegas. Because by the time his career is done, he'll have been there for a while. Depending on how many cups he's won. Give them a number to retire.
I mean, they'll
8 or 9 years in each city.
They'll definitely do Mark Stone. I don't know anyone.
We'll see. We'll see how aggressive they get.
Yeah.
Now that those guys have won a cup, it's like, okay, they're a lot easier to celebrate.
For sure.
You feel a lot more inclined to celebrate guys who bring you a cup.
Not wrong.
It will forever be weird, that whole Sharks era with all those great players. Are you really going to raise a bunch of rafters to your jerseys for guys who didn't bring home a championship?
You might if you're Toronto or something.
Yeah, no, that's my new official vote. If you want
Make an
to,
NHL
yeah, if you
Hall
want
of
to
Fame,
do an
all right.
NHL Hall of Fame, it's NHL players. You can acknowledge their NHL careers, but then you should do a Hockey Hall of Fame that is for they affected hockey on levels more than just at the NHL.
That's fine. I just am being nitpicky about just don't call it a Hall of Fame.
And I don't even necessarily I don't even disagree with that.
Yeah, right. I know. I'm just being being semantic about it for sure.
Give me some type of NHL recognition that's not the Hall of Fame.
All right, let's just cut to the chase and let's make a Hall of Very Good and be done with it. Hall of Very Good Hockey Players.
not the worst idea you've ever had. Or just like a hockey museum.
I mean, that's kind of what the Hall of Fame is.
Right. But that's what I'm saying. You take anybody can be in the museum.
Yeah.
We put cool exhibits.
They had the traveling thing, which they did some of that with. But anyway, one of the other topics I wanted to get into specifically because I was looking into this. With players, if you didn't know, other than Wayne Gretzky, you have to be retired for 3 years before you're eligible to go into the Hall of Fame. It might be 4 now. I thought it was 3. Doesn't matter. Not the point I'm making. No. When it comes to builders, there are like a bunch of dudes in the Hall of Fame that still have jobs in the NHL. Ken Holland is in there. Gary Bettman is in there.
Gary Bettman just got inducted last year.
Yeah, there's a couple other people too. Ken Hitchcock got in this year, even though he's not.
Ken Holland being in there is so
I
funny.
think that's crazy. Lou Lamoriello's in there.
Why do you think that's crazy?
Ken Holland?
Yeah.
It's how bad he is at his job now.
Okay. Pierre was bad at the end of his job, too.
Sure.
Yeah.
He's in the Hall?
Well, I know, but he's not still actively being bad at the job.
Yeah, it's because he was bad enough, and the Avs were like, please go away.
Yeah, but I mean, after 2 Stanley Cups with the same organization, a bunch of very well-accomplished teams.
Ken Holland was wildly successful early in his career.
Yeah, but this is more of like the... It's like when
he
Chris...
2 eras worth of champions.
Sure.
In Detroit.
Okay. It's like...
Decimated that team for the better part of a decade.
It was like when... it was like when Chris Chelios was being traded by AHL teams where it was like, please just end this. We all want to remember the good stuff. It's just funny knowing what Ken Holland is fumbling around doing now and being like, I guess that was a Hall of Fame career at one point. Because wow, is he bad at it now.
Kind of getting off the topic I wanted to get to here was, are there certain players where they should just stop doing this nonsense? Like, you could put Sidney Crosby in the Hall of Fame tomorrow while he's still playing and it'd be fine.
Right.
Should they be more aggressive with that like they have been with builders, or do you think it's fine as is?
I think it's fine as is.
Okay.
I think they need to be, some criteria of what the hell a builder needs
qualifies
to do to get
as,
in.
yeah.
Some benchmarks for guys to hit would be great.
It is very, very vague.
And this is where it being the Hockey Hall of Fame and not the NHL Hall of Fame is like...
Makes things complicated.
Yeah, because players have international success, and now you have a generation of players
who haven't had the opportunities
internationally.
And how does that stack up?
Exactly. Yeah. When you're talking about stacking it up historically against, this guy won 3 gold medals, and it's like, well, that guy also went to the Olympics 3 times. Nathan McKinnon might not get to go to an Olympics, but hey, he got to play on a really fun World Cup team once.
Yeah, but Ben Myers has been to the Olympics, so...
So funny.
Cale Makar turned that to said no thanks to the Olympics. The ultimate power move. I guess I would just say I would like to see for things like builders maybe a little more like a concept,
some clarity.
Yeah, because with players it's like you kind of know it when you see it.
Yep.
A guy like Sidney Crosby, it's easy to know.
Yep.
Yeah, that guy's a Hall of Famer. A guy like Peter Forsberg, Eric Lindros, Pavel Bure, Paul Kariya, really great players who had significant injury issues. I'm good with those. As a guy who was like Terrell Davis has to be in the Football Hall of Fame, like I'm good with
bright lights that burn out quickly.
Exactly. Yeah. But because of injury, not because Corey Perry, hung around for 12 years and
became
sucked.
A stat patter, but scored 12 points a year, so it actually hurt his stats.
Became like the Mark Recchi compiler.
Yeah.
Where it's like, he stuck around till he was 42 and put up 40-point seasons between ages 35 and 40.
Can he come do that for the Avs next year?
And just keep, a guy like that, the compilers, the Patrick Marleaus, who just stick around for a really long time.
Marleau's probably going to get in, too.
I think those are more complicated conversations because you're like, how much do you value a guy that breaks the game's played record versus like the fact that he was just like
his points per game numbers are really not that good.
You're like, for the last 8 years of his career, he was just like, okay.
One,
like
He's been a third line guy for a decade, player,
yeah, but not like a leading, not an all-star. Hasn't been an all-star in a really long time, kind of thing.
Well, and relative to your point of like, should you just cut the nonsense? Like the fact that Jaromir Jagr isn't even eligible to start his like clock.
The dude should have been in 10 years ago,
right?
I think if you leave the NHL, and this is again where it's the Hockey Hall of Fame, like you're not in the NHL anymore. Jaromir Jagr is going to be in the Hall. Just put him in the Hall of Fame.
Right, yeah. Right.
The only reason that guy's still playing is so that team doesn't die.
Right? He's playing to keep the team that he owns
and the league
afloat.
was like, no, you have to play.
So yeah, like the guy's not even playing. I'm sure there's some love of the game, but do you think at this point, like he's just like being held hostage by his career and by like his ownership, and then it's like, well, if he doesn't play,
the rate at which he produces. For being in his 50s.
It's outrageous.
It's dumb, dude. Like he's
even that league's not great. I get it, but still, like, come on, man. Those are professional players, and he's 50, putting up like 3 points a game.
I've always made the kind of tongue-in-cheek comment of like, he does not get enough love in the greatest of all time conversation, purely just because like that dude did it across so many different eras at a high level. And it's just crazy.
Yep.
How good he actually was and so still long. Is.
Yeah. It won everything there is to win. I mean, I guess
dude,
not
his elite prospects page is like that was like 10 fucking scrolls to get to the bottom.
The only guys who are comparable are the guys that get traded every year. So there's 2 lines.
Right.
That's how they catch up.
Played for 30 teams, but only played for 7 years.
Yeah, exactly.
This is crazy.
Dude, he didn't even play in the Czech 2 league this last year. He played in the top Czech league this last year.
Yep. It's
14
ridiculous.
points in 26 games.
It's so dumb. So dumb that he's even capable of that.
He is 51. No, he's 52. This says date of birth February 15th, 1972, age 51. Oh no, that is correct.
He'd be 51. He'd be 52 next year. It's always tough. It's always tough to do math on.
We always say I took this job because I was told there was no math.
I don't know who told you there was no math in this job. There's definitely math.
I don't believe that was part of our conversation.
Maybe
that was a Dre conversation.
Everyone knows there's no math. Dude, it's just his first line in Elite Prospects is from the 84-85 season. That is so funny.
What was it?
It was his U18 team. He had 41 points in 31 games.
So he's played professional hockey in 4 decades. Like,
well, his first NHL season was 90-91.
Is it 92? Oh, yeah, you're right. I guess. Yeah. Jesus.
5 different decades.
That's so dumb.
That's pretty crazy.
And his last NHL season, he had 16 goals. His second to last NHL season, he had 27.
He wasn't even bad Calgary, at the end.
Where he had just slowed down so much.
Yeah.
And the NHL was becoming
I'm sorry, his
fast.
last full season, he scored 16 goals. He only played 20 games.
And then was done.
I wanted the Avs to sign him just because it was just a fun jersey collection there near the end, like the obscure jerseys.
The guys who went around with all of his jerseys.
Dude, that was
the
mullets. The traveling Jagers. Yeah, good for them.
Anyway, he should be in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah. He should be in the Hall of Fame. He should be in the Hall of Fame today.
But whenever he decides to quit,
there's like a ton of those guys, right? Like Datsuk went back to the KHL and was like, okay, that guy should be in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, just put him in. Don't put Zetterberg in. Fuck that guy.
Okay, calm down.
His career also really tailed off near the end.
He got hurt
a lot.
Put in McGillney.
Oh, McGillney should be in for sure. Tiff, I know you wanted to pop off about the women's spots. So.
There was a comment that kind of just just said it perfectly earlier. I just don't understand how they have 2 spots available every year since 2010, and there are 9 women, and there are like 15 more that could easily make it in. I'm just very annoyed by that. It's just a constant annoyance. The NHL and Hockey Hall of Fame and all of that just continues to let me down, and it's very sad.
Is there a woman that you would have liked, like one in particular this year that you felt was snubbed?
I saw a list last night where
a number of
like
them.
5 of them where I was like, okay. I know
Yeah.
I think like Cassie Campbell, I think she would have been a really good one.
Totally
Julie Chu would have been a really good one.
Do they normally, and again, without looking,
Yeah.
do they normally use both spots?
No, never.
No.
They haven't
They
used
don't,
both
yeah.
spots since they first introduced women into the Hockey Hall of Fame in 2010. And then they've done one, and then there's been several years where they've just not done any.
none.
And it's not like they're taking away from the other spots.
No.
Like
Yeah.
it's not like other people wouldn't have gotten in.
Because
had
here's
they
what's hard
been-
about this conversation, was we just spent the last 20 minutes being like, they need to be more exclusive with it. And so I'm trying to...
But I
And now
also
we're like, bring more women in.
however, I think your point earlier about how like this is the Hockey Hall of Fame, not the NHL Hall of Fame,
Totally.
is the sticking point
Yeah.
for me. Like, and
No,
this
100%.
is pretty personal for me, but like I think I told you guys before that like Cale Makar was one of like the first things I saw that like made me really interested in hockey. I go back even further to just that women's Olympic Games that went into 2 a.m. I do remember I was working at a bar watching that game and I was like, holy shit, this is super cool.
I don't know how the Lamoureux sisters aren't in the Hall of Fame. That's crazy to me.
That's my little
The
tangent
Lamoureux, you
about
said?
it.
yeah.
Well, isn't one of them still playing?
I don't think Jocelyn isn't. I don't know.
See, I thought the other one
Maybe
was
she
still.
is then, but still, like they should be shoo-ins, right? You would think
Yeah, between the
golden goal and the
Canadian-
shootouts,
Well, between the Canadian and the American teams, there should be
a half a dozen
a
at
whole
least
bunch
for
of women
each.
like
Yeah,
flooding the hall
right.
in the next 10 years,
So,
so that they're not using spots now when they can
yep,
on obvious candidates like Jennifer Botterill.
yep.
Like you're gonna need more than 2 real soon.
Yeah, they're coming for real.
So I was gonna say there is a part of me that likes that they they're keeping it exclusive and they're being very calculated with it, but they're not really showing that restraint in any other category.
Yeah, they're not.
They're adding
Like,
builders by like
let's
the
be real.
dozen.
Mike
Like,
Vernon just made the Hall of Fame.
Right.
Are you fucking kidding me? With
And-
Mike Vernon?
I was gonna say,
Mike Vernon.
it's hard for me because
Jesus
I
Christ.
like the discretion they're using on the women's side of it. It's annoying that they're not using it anywhere else. That's the only place it seems to be manifesting in like, well, we're being choosy here.
you don't
Yeah.
get to
Hey,
do that
it's
with
the Hall
just
of
that
Fame,
category,
okay?
right?
Right. It's like,
Oh, by the way, hey, Mike Vernon.
if they were doing that all over the place in every category, then I'd be like, yeah, it's hard to get in.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. I mean, you look at the Baseball Hall of Fame. Baseball's always been like, it's hard to get into that Hall of Fame, and
it should be.
Yeah, and like that's always kind of been for me like the gold standard of Hall of Fame, and in recent years it's gotten a little
Different time
it's
for a
gotten
different
little-
show. Yeah.
It's gotten tougher, but like it was hard to get in, and getting in meant something. And getting into the Hockey Hall of Fame doesn't feel like it means something because
I disagree with that.
7 guys get in every single year, and it's not the same celebration of like there are years in baseball where guys just don't get in. Like there's nobody in the Hall of Fame.
Really?
Yeah. Like, hey, we didn't add anybody this year.
Yep.
And for me, that makes it feel like it's a bigger deal. Larry Walker went in with Derek Jeter. Just those 2.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. And then again, you have a 7-person class in hockey, and it's every year. It's, here's 5 guys, here's 4 guys, here's 5 people, here's 4 people, And for me, I think it has watered it down to the point where I don't care about this anymore. Like, do I think Alexander McGillney should be in? Sure. Do I think it's a giant travesty that he's not? No.
No.
Because if you just wait long enough and you whine loud enough,
They'll
you'll probably get him
eventually.
in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For me, I just don't care about the Hall of Fame anymore in hockey.
Okay.
Because I think they've already made it too big.
It's
That's
too
where-
late to undo now.
Yep. You decided on a big hall, and now you have,
All right.
now you act that way every year, except when it comes to women's hockey. And okay, like Gary Bettman's in your Hall of Fame. Are you fucking kidding me?
Well, so I was going to make that point a second ago. Like, obviously, Gary Bettman would go in when he eventually does retire.
Why?
because he was the commissioner for
30 years or whatever.
Several decades. Yeah, like I think that's a pretty obvious answer. He's expanded the league. How many teams were in the league when he took over?
I don't know the answer. Probably 22.
I was going to say he's added at least 10 teams. At least 10 teams. By the time he's done, that number could be closer to 15. He's grown the league beyond what they ever thought it could generate revenue-wise. Like, it's obvious. It's very obvious why Gary Bettman would get in. But to Rudo's point, it just kind of speaks to we want to put as many people in every year. It's like you're adding people that are still doing the job.
Yeah. It's weird.
Yeah, my problem with having Ken Holland is that he's active.
Right.
Not that he...
How is he a Hall of Fame GM and still a hired GM?
Yeah. Now, it's one thing if a guy retires, goes in, and then
comes back.
Unretired?
Yeah. Sure,
Yeah.
that's
not
different.
how this has gone.
Yeah. Right.
Ken Holland has been actively employed for the last 3 decades.
Yeah.
I don't know. Anyway, if this Hall of Fame talk is making you as hangry as it's making me, you can get yourself some illegal Pete's. Go get yourself delicious burritos with fresh ingredients at 11 different locations in Colorado. They also have the longest happy hour around from 3 to 8 p.m. You can get their delicious margaritas or other drinks, of course, but their margs are the way to go. You can sit out on the patio unless you're Jesse and convinced it's going to rain every day of the year.
Yeah, it looks great out there right now.
When the days are nice, you can sit out on the patio.
Let me just check my phone. Oh,
it's going to rain today.
Severe thunderstorm watch issued for the I-25
We've known
corridor.
it's going to rain today for a week.
Hail and flooding in all caps, it says. Our primary concerns, 2 to 6 p.m. Let's head out to the patio, Rudo.
All right. Well, you better hurry to Illegal Pete's then if you're going to get it in before.
I need you to wrap this up. I got to go sit out on the Illegal Pete's patio. I only got till 2. Oh, shit. That's 8 minutes from now.
Go check them out. There's one just a few blocks from the DNVR bar if you want to come visit us here. Illegal Pete's. Delicious stuff. Also brought to you by the fantastic people over at Shady Rays. They've got tons of different sunglasses that you can get, all sorts of styles, all sorts of polarizations. You go to shadyrays.com, use code DNVR, and you get 2 pairs or more, you get 50% off. It's basically buy a pair, get 1 free with Shady Rays.
Did you see the video where a guy dropped his Shady Rays from a 3rd story to see if they would break?
See that. Did they break?
Nope.
Nice. I guess that explains their coverage policy of they'll replace him in the first 30
they're
days.
Like, look, if you broke him, you accomplished something.
Yeah, you went hard.
Yeah, we'll replace them.
So get on it. Their customer service is great. Not just breaking them. If you lose them or you just don't like them in the first 30 days, you can send them back. They'll send you a new pair, and you'll be good to go. So check them out. Again, shadyrays.com, or if you're local, they have a brick and mortar in the Park Meadows Mall. Third period of the DNVR Avalanche Podcast, presented by DraftKings. Well, sure.
I wanna start with the Eagles.
Yeah.
Because they do have a coach search.
Yep.
That is ongoing. And I would say right now, the kind of what we thought going into this season, into the offseason of if Cronin gets poached. Aaron Schneekloff.
Well, they promote internally with
Aaron Schneekloff's
yeah.
been on that bench as an assistant every day.
And he was their head coach when they were an ECHL team. He's been there forever.
He was winning Kelly Cups with them
as a player,
as a player, and then head coach.
Yep.
So he's been there. He's been successful behind the bench. He's very, very highly thought of by the Avalanche organization.
Has been given a lot of credit for the defensive development down there as well.
Which has been a big part. Cronin obviously gets a lot of credit, but Schneekloff and the work that he's done with the defensemen down up in Loveland has been a big part of it as well. And I think it would be a surprise to me
if they went elsewhere.
If they went a different direction for the head coach.
Sure.
They would need to find an assistant to replace
him. Yeah.
To replace Schneekloff's role. But as that search continues, I would say as of right now, you could probably call Schneekloff the front runner for that job.
Yeah.
But that search continues, and we'll see.
Will be interesting to see how it plays out. For sure.
I don't know when they're going to make that decision. Obviously, they've got a lot on the plate. They've got a whole draft,
whole lot of off-season stuff coming up in the next 2 weeks.
I am expecting Dev Camp to start the same day free agency opens.
Great.
I don't know if that means on ice, but I believe
it looks like the on ice stuff is supposed to start on the 3rd.
I believe the plan is for the Avs to whoever they draft, and we'll see.
Will be
if
in
they're
town,
at the draft, whatever.
Immediately, basically.
Those guys that are there will go from the draft immediately to Denver and be introduced to media.
Yep.
Probably on the 1st, probably that morning. And then I don't know about the on ice. I saw Evans tweet about the on ice being booked from the 3rd to the 5th.
Yep. It's been historically accurate.
I would expect that's accurate, that they probably give them a day.
I was going to say,
go
had you said that they got
town
on the ice that Saturday, I would have been surprised.
But
that's
I think
very quick.
I think they will start the the education stuff that they do, or they go through social media stuff and
all
they meet with the nutritionist and how to be a pro, like those kinds of things that they do when they draft players and bring them into the organization. So
things are about to ramp up, basically.
Yeah, and there's obviously a lot going along league wide, and so I also would not be incredibly surprised if over the next 5 days we saw a re-signing or two.
I mean, it's that time of year, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
and the Avs.
Well, I was just gonna say this is always the biggest false start of a 10-day period of all time, because it's like, nice, we got some signings, we got the draft, we got free
Columbus
agency,
went in.
they're on the ice.
They were alone,
and then it dies for 6 weeks.
Yeah, well, and then you're like, are we one of those teams with an arbitration case?
No?
No?
Okay. Nothing to do.
Do we have some unsigned RFAs? We can talk, we're going to talk about the Bowen Byram contract all summer.
We're going to talk about that a lot.
Watch them get that done tomorrow, and it's like, great, thanks, guys.
Well, I'm kind of surprised that Newhook isn't done, because I don't think that's a very complicated case. You give him a 2-year deal, you give him right around $2 million with a couple $100,000 either way, depending on whatever, and then you're done.
I do wonder about that couple $100,000, because I think the Avs might be like, hey, we'll get it done. Let us go do some stuff in free agency and then see exactly how many dollars we have left.
We'll do 2.2 later.
Exactly.
When we've got the 0.2 that we're comfortable giving you.
Yeah,
fair enough. But I do think that is a much easier conversation than the Byron one, for sure.
They've got a track record too in the past of all of these kind of not flooding in at once, but you're like, why haven't they done any of these? And then
a piece here, a piece
there. And then you'll see, we'll get those press releases where you look at the dates of them, you keep them in your email inbox and you go back and look at it later and you're like, oh, they sent out 5 of these in 4 days.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Everything fell into place and it was rapid fire. Yeah. That is how it goes sometimes. I see chat talking about it a lot with Calgary and the announcements today from some of their players.
And they aren't announcements.
Yeah.
It is one reporter saying, I don't know, but it sounds like maybe these guys are possibly leaning towards
not a ton of solidness there.
Thing.
Yeah.
So there's nothing there for me.
And also them
outside of
telling them
Hanifin, there's nothing there yet.
Even saying that they play out their contract and leave is a very possible thing that happens.
Conroy has said he's not letting it happen with Gaudreau. Sure. After Gaudreau, he said, I'm not doing it. But the week before the draft, that's a lot of ducks to try and get in a row really fast.
Yeah.
We'll see. And again, outside of Hanifin, you got 2 we'll sees and maybes. I don't know.
Not a lot of confidence in those statements.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I read them and I said, okay, this is a lot to say. Maybe.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Yeah. With Hanifin, it sounded a little more definitive of he's not interested.
Also, maybe.
And that's not an Avalanche conversation, unfortunately.
There's just not that I think Hanifin on the Avs would be dope, but
I do too.
It's not something that the Avs should be looking into giving up assets for.
Yeah.
Really.
If you could, if they were to trade Devon Taves to solve their 2C problem and then turn around and aggressively pursue Hanifin.
That'd be fun, but yeah.
That's one where it would be like, okay, you could talk me into this shit. I'm here for that. But no. At the moment, with how things are currently constructed, that's not an Avs thing.
Jesse,
I'd be more interested in Backlund than Lindholm, though.
I would be more interested in Lindholm, but
Lindholm's the better player. He's younger.
I understand you look at Lindholm and you're like, oh, you have to give up everything on planet Earth to get that guy.
Well, and then you're not going to be able to sign him. And if you do, it's going to cost you Devon Toews. And neither of those are true for Backlund.
So I did want to get into this conversation. Heading into this silly season of draft and free agency, we've talked about it a little bit, but do we think the West or the East is positioned better here?
In what way?
Yeah, for what?
In ability to go out and get what they need and or want. We talked about it with the trade deadline where a lot of picks came west. Mm-hmm. When you look at cap situations, I think it's fairly even. There's teams on both the East and the West that are really cap strapped, and there's teams that have a ton of room to play with. Is this just an arbitrary division of East and West? Do we even care if one division's better than the other?
I don't.
Yeah, I don't think it really matters.
Okay. Fair enough.
I mean, all the talk all year was what a bloodbath it's going to be in the East.
Yeah.
Those teams are just going to cannibalize each other. And it was the 8th seed who ended up running through 3 of them, and then they got smoked in the final. The narrative all year was how much better the East was than the West. The team that barely got in ended up handily going through the East, and then got smoked by the top team in the West.
Yeah, I mean, they escaped the first round with the historic upset. Flip that switch, and they were off and running.
Well, I was going to say, from game 5... Game 4? No, game 5
yeah.
Of that first round, Florida-Boston, they went
12-1.
12-1.
I guess 11-1.
11-1,
but yeah.
3.
Yeah, I think that first round series was
it
was 12 because they won one in the final.
I still think
not in order. Yeah,
I still think that the East was better than the West in the regular season, but
sure,
being better in the regular season turns out doesn't matter that much, does it?
And it doesn't really matter. I mean, who's better in the postseason? It was the West better because they won the final.
I mean,
Vegas was better, right?
By results.
The rest of the West, I don't know.
The one head-to-head matchup that they had, they won that.
It's not like Vegas was really scraping by teams in the West either. They were taking care of their series in 6 at worst.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Hard to say.
I mean, it's going to be interesting because I really do. I think the NHL is in an interesting spot right now because of the flat cap. But I think you have teams that are just inherently being more aggressive. You now have seen a winning formula out of Vegas. I think teams are going to be more aggressive. We're kind of learning. AJ, you've talked about this for years now. Like, I remember you used to get pissed about it. And I used to be like, I don't know what you mean. The system works fine. Like, the salary cap, the bad contracts, the aging curves, like all that shit.
There's just ways out of it.
Right.
Yeah.
Teams have just gotten too smart. They can find their way out of any of that stuff.
Yeah, they figure it out.
The only part that I do think makes it interesting is the fact that the East, top teams in the East did spend so many assets.
Well, and like a team like Boston's paying that price right now because they're staring down the barrel of Bergeron and Krejci might retire. We don't know what their decisions are going to be.
Even if they don't retire, age will catch up to them eventually.
Well, and they went so hard on they have to give guys away.
Yeah.
You know. They've been trying to give Mike Riley away for like a year.
Yeah. Dude, they were trying to give Jake DeBrusk away.
And now they want them over. Wait a minute.
There's a conversation where Taylor Hall gets moved this summer for them to try and save money on things. Like,
should we?
They're going to lose Dmitry Orlov. Like, they're in a position where they're going to be hard cuts there.
Should we stop allowing this? Like, to me, there are some weird similarities between. I was very young when this change happened, but it used to be in the NHL that you could trade a player for money. Straight up.
So you want to trade a player for cap?
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying, should there be a punishment for these teams straight up giving away $7 million players?
There is. They lose the player.
Yeah, I was going to say, they don't have the player. They get nothing in return.
I get that they don't have the player.
And they get nothing in return.
But should there be limits on these teams and not allowing them to free up that cap space?
Not at all.
You don't think so?
No,
okay.
Not even remotely.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think it works just fine. Vancouver had to buy out OEL. Well, Vancouver's going to pay the price.
Well, I was going to say in the NHL,
Minnesota bought out
so is Arizona.
Suter.
The NHL
they're going to pay the price.
Already makes it the hardest.
Is a different conversation.
Sure.
I think retained salary. They agreed to pay X amount of money for X number of years. If that team turns around and buys that person out,
it's not their problem anymore.
Be Arizona's problem.
Okay.
I think that is horseshit.
Well, and the NHL already makes, like, of the four of the 4 major North American pro sports leagues, they already have the hardest cap to try to maneuver.
It's true.
There's already a bunch of rules that I think work against teams. Like we've talked about it before. I think you should get a discount against the cap for guys that you've drafted. Like the fact that we see NHL teams forced to lose guys based on them drafting well.
Yeah, like if they gave them like a 10%
right.
cap hit.
Something small, but you diminish
10% off Cale Makar is $900K.
Yeah,
that's
almost
player.
$1 million.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's if you've been drafted and developed by an organization, having like a 10% discount
against
on
the cap, right?
On your 2 highest contracts or something, dude, I'm cool with that.
And that's something that I actually think the league needs to make it easier.
Creative levers like that would be really good ways of being like, okay, well, because right now it's as long as revenue continues to go up and as long as you keep making money, then the cap will go up and then
it'll
blah,
be
blah,
fine.
blah, and it's all good, baby. Like everybody's making more money, right?
Big capitalism vibes.
Yeah. Oh, Jesus. But like creative levers like that where, hey, this incentivizes teams. You know, we just saw the NBA do the exact opposite. Where they're like, oh, hey, if you have X number of max players, this like second apron that they put into the new CBA is going to force teams.
Now you pay even more money.
Basically, it's going to punish teams for being too good.
Yeah.
And see, that's what I think.
And that's not something I don't think any league should be punishing teams for being too good.
Well, and my issue with the way the NHL one is set up, and I just said it, I feel like it feels like teams get punished for drafting well. It's like, you drafted 4 really high-end players.
And you can't afford them
and
all.
now you can't afford them.
Yeah.
And teams end up having to do, ridiculous things, and it kind of ends up taking you out of a window, and those players you drafted doesn't really end up doing you all that much good. So to answer the question, no, I think the last thing on earth the NHL should do is make it more difficult for teams to move on from players.
I agree with what you're saying in principle, and I think especially for the players, you want to give them as much power as possible in those situations.
I still think contract lengths need to be cut down. I think they're too long. Because
I
mean, if you cut it down to like
teams can't fucking help themselves. Calgary is a great example of a year ago they were spinning their wheels and they throw 7 years at Nazem Kadri, which now creates an anchor that they can't do anything about.
Even
because
if
these teams can't help themselves of giving out long-term
but
deals
again,
like
and that's why it's like that's.
And so take it out of their hands and cut it down to 5 years so that these guys in their 30s
I'd cut it down to
continuing.
I'd cut it down to 6. I think
6 could be the 8-year thing.
No, I'd do
Give
6
them the
and
extra
7.
year.
I'd do 6 and 7.
See,
I just think contract lengths are too long and teams are just they can't help themselves.
Here's my thing though. I mean, dude, as we were a show that talked a lot about like, wow, it'd be great for the Avs to make Nazem Kadri. It'd be really hard for you to replace that guy. And the day that got signed, we jumped on this show. And we were like, "What a mistake!"
Yep.
What a mistake. So if your
look
management,
who he was back to the normal Nazem Kadri.
Right.
This year.
If your management can't
not worth that
maneuver
contract
that
on day one,
then that's on you, your ownership, your management. I don't think the league should be getting people out of making dumb decisions.
That's what I'm trying to get to.
The problem is that then they just sit there and you end up with you end up with like I guess for me, I'm looking at a guy that's a good player whose career is now the second half of his career is probably going to be wasted because he can't be moved.
Yeah.
Now, like he agreed to that deal, like
Right.
he took the bag, man. Like if he wanted other flexibility and he wanted other options,
Right.
he had them.
Well,
He went and got the biggest contract he could absolutely get himself, and that's fine. But now he's probably stuck. And I just think, from a league perspective, I think it's bad to have players stuck like that.
I guess
that's how I feel.
I don't
about
think
it.
being stuck is that bad. It's the situations like where Louis Eriksson's career ended up, where they're like, "We're going to send this guy to the minors. It's so bad." That's when it becomes a problem for me.
Why?
Because then you're taking players and you're having $6 million
like the ninth
or
one.
whatever of dead cap hit. That's not even. It's not because he's injured. It's not because he's retiring. It's because you're actively not playing him in the NHL because he's that bad. And that's where I think the shorter contracts would prevent a lot of that.
I mean, that's just a mistake from management.
Right. And
That's just a bad evaluation.
I agree. And a shorter contract means that mistake doesn't end up going on and on and on and on.
My thing is, I don't like when good players get stuck in places because the teams can't move them because they gave them too big of a commitment.
now I guess-
this is the one thing about the NBA that I think they did well was when they limited contract length, it increased a lot of player movement, and it made the league always interesting in terms of what's about to happen. I mean, I'm probably going to open my phone and find out that there was another 3-team trade involving 65,000 draft picks. Like the NBA and the NBA is interesting in this way. It makes it interesting.
It does force more action.
How would you feel about?
And a major component of that was cutting down contract.
How would you feel about if you were signing a max term deal, whether it be 7 years for a free agent or 8 years for an internal, that at the halfway mark of that, so you say after 4 years,
bring back options,
a player option.
Yeah.
You get one player option halfway through. If the player chooses to stay, well, then now you're locked into that full term. But kind of give them only on the max term, you get a player option halfway through.
Maybe a mutual option.
I think I wouldn't even mind that. That'd be fine. But I think just bring back make the 7th and 8th year options. 6-year max with options to 7 and 8.
I would do a 4-year max with 5 and 6.
I think that's too short. But
See,
I understand that spurs more action.
If you're shortening it down to 5 years, you can't have the option.
And it gets players paid.
It does get players paid.
But
you'll get a second contract for
you get
high-end players
with 3rd and 4th and 5th contracts at that point.
Here's the hard part, though. So, like Nazem Kadri, part of the reason why, I mean, you said he knows what he did. He took the money, and good for him. He should have. Like, he should have taken the money.
We all would have.
The hard part for him is like, okay, let's say you cap it at 5 years. Does that dude get another deal after 5 years?
Well, and if they were
And
capping it at 5 years, it opens up the idea of him signing in Colorado for 3. Because he's not leaving another $40 million or whatever on the table.
Well,
you know,
the other side of that is
if the Avs' biggest offer to Kadri that last year, and I'm just spitballing here, say it was 4 years at $5.5 million. The difference between that and 7x7 is gigantic.
Yeah.
If you cap it at 5 years and $7 million,
still pretty big.
It's still a pretty big, but it opens it up where you could say, now Colorado might be able to retain a guy.
You're a lot closer in that area.
And I think that's where I'm trying to encourage player movement, and I'm trying to encourage players getting paid more often, because I think that these 7-8 year deals, I just don't think they're great.
If the San Jose Sharks find a way to get out of Erik Karlsson's deal this summer, then
nothing
I
is off
officially
the
don't
table.
think that anybody can get out of it. Like, everybody can get out of every deal, and the contracts you sign are more just for funsies.
I have said this for a long, long time, but there are very, very, very few contracts in the NHL that are truly untradeable.
Well, we got to...
Do
you have one off the top of your head?
Marc-Edouard Vlasic.
It's pretty dead.
Is he still in San Jose?
Mm-hmm.
He can retire, and then it'll be tradable.
Because there's like 5 more years on that thing, over $7 million. He's been bad for years, and he's like 34.
That's crazy, too, because he was one of the more underrated guys I thought in the league for a large stretch.
But, like, that's as close as I can get to, like, it's truly untradeable.
We do have to wrap up as the Nugget Show is coming on, so you can...
TDSP's coming on.
Oh, is it TDSP? What are you guys talking about today?
Mount Rushmore of Denver sports and how Jokic changed it.
I mean, we said all along he needed to win one.
Yep.
Yoke.
Well, we're gonna
Yoke's on it. McKinnon's probably on it.
We're gonna talk about where the Avs guys are pushing it. So
it's interesting.
Yep. Because I think, we're gonna have a TDSP on this.
The conversation of McKinnon. I'm so sorry.
No,
We've
you're
interrupted
fine.
like 5 times.
You're fine.
McKinnon versus Makar at like the top of the current Avs.
Yeah.
Organization is so fascinating.
Yeah. One guy has a 5-year head start. So.
Isn't it nice? Right, I've told this story a billion times how I used to be in high school so unbelievably jealous of Pittsburgh and Washington, D.C. markets because they got to watch just 2 of these all-time greats every single night. And there's 2 of them on the Avs
it's pretty good. It's pretty good
Obviously,
to be an
Pittsburgh
Avs fan.
Crosby and Malkin, but
anyway, we are out of here for the day. We will be back tomorrow talking draft of some kind, most likely.
I think we're also brought to you by Kind Love.
We are brought to you by Kind Love as well, which
their products are great, man. I've gotten really high off of them.
AJ's gotten too high off them. He's taken too many gummies. So
not just the gummies, man. Some of their other products, that the turbo core that you put into the middle of a
the
cigarette or a joint
stick thing. Yeah. It does. It's
Where's
turbo for a reason. All right.
Amps your shit up.
Where are they? Is there one around here?
I don't know if there is one around here, but you can order online. So,
well,
do that. Look, the QR code's right on screen. Code DNVR to get 25% off in store. check out Kind Love near you. They've been around since 2010, one of the longest dispensaries here in Colorado. And they're local, so we love them.
That's not how contract retention works, man. You can't just count the contract they acquired in Cal Peterson.
What?
You don't get to make up that the Flyers are retaining $14 million because they took on Cal Peterson. He's going to be a goalie for them.
You only have 3 retention slots. If you're retaining $14 million, you did something crazy.
Yeah, you don't get to. He's counting the guy that they acquired.
That's just a full contract.
Exactly.
Yeah,
they acquired a player and his contract. That's not retention.
All right, well, this is not. We're done. We're done. Take us out of here. Goodbye.